Since when has the Nigerian government cared?
About monopoly. Yeah.
How many other monopolies does Dangote have? Does anybody care about that?
Cement, which other one?
Sugar.
Sugar, yeah.
Literally, there is basically one guy that controls the sugar market in Nigeria. That's crazy to think about, but that was never a problem. All of a sudden, when it comes to this one commodity, now you have a problem. Why is that?
So, Nigeria, the biggest oil producer, but it exports most of its crude oil. Now, you see Dangote coming in with his refinery company. What do you think about, at first, he was really disappointed because he said, when I built this refinery company, I thought, the government would be happy. But they started telling him, oh, we don't want you to be a monopoly and everything. Then now, when I look at this Dangote thing, I honestly would like the government to seriously, use this refinery to, so that Nigeria can finally refine its oil 100% and sell refined, which is where I think we can all agree that's where the money is. Refined oil is more, profitable than crude oil. What do you think about Dangote, the government, oil, this whole thing? What do you think?
So I actually think this is one of the most clear-cut examples of what neocolonialism looks like.
Okay.
For those who are not visually familiar with it. For those who think that neocolonialism is a fairy tale or it's a conspiracy theory. Because what you have here is a country which, I think Nigeria first started commercially producing oil in the 1930s or 1940s. Supported the British World War II effort. It's been producing oil ever since. And supposedly has 4 existing refineries, which have somehow never worked. And then a private businessman comes in, builds a refinery, which is not just a mega refinery. It's the single biggest investment ever in Nigeria's history. Wow. Like, it's the single biggest piece of money someone has ever put into Nigeria at a time before, ever. Wow. More than the Chinese have ever invested at a go, more than anything anyone has ever put into Nigeria. A Nigerian businessman does that. This refinery actually takes off because there were those who had their doubts. I was one of them.
Okay.
First of all, the timelines were not true, which led me to believe that something very funny is going on here. This thing is not going to work. One way or another, it actually began to work. And then, very curiously, you would think that for the government of an oil-producing country that doesn't refine its oil, and that everybody and we've been told since we're in primary school that Nigeria's basic economic problem is that it exports raw and it imports finished. So everybody and their dog knows that to fix that problem, Nigeria has to export refined petroleum. So you would think that the government of that country would be excited at the prospect of finally supplying raw material to this site in Lagos, and then from there, it's exporting refined petroleum to the world. Instead, very curiously, you then have this government coming out in so many different ways to try and discredit this refinery. The first is you get some guy saying, oh, the output doesn't meet emission standards or some bullshit.
I saw that.
Next thing, they start yapping about monopoly. Since when has the Nigerian government cared?
About monopoly.
Like, since when has that been a thing? How many other monopolies does Dangote have? Does anybody care about that?
Cement, which other one?
Sugar,
yeah.
Literally, there is basically one guy that controls the sugar market in Nigeria. That's crazy to think about, but that was never a problem. All of a sudden, when it comes to this one commodity, now you have a problem. Why is that? I mean, it don't take a genius to work out what is going on here. International oil companies whose refining businesses are being squeezed because this is a thing. They actually when they put articles talking about it in Bloomberg and Financial Times, you know it's real. Where they're talking about how refineries like Shell Pernis in Rotterdam, they're losing business because of Dangote Refinery. and that expansion plans have been shelved because Dangote Refinery is basically eating everybody's lunch.
Oh.
And what they're basically saying, without saying it, right? If you've heard of a term called active listening, I mean, you're not only reading what's being said, you're also listening to what's not being said. What's not being said is Dangote or this Nigerian refinery shouldn't be allowed to eat our lunch because it's not in the role that has been set for Africa in the global economy. The role that has been set is for these guys to supply our raw materials. We process, we gain the economic value of the refined finished product.
Yes.
Now, this Nigerian guy is gaining the benefit of the economic benefit of the finished product that should be ours. And then, I don't know if you saw that news article that the largest source of crude oil, the largest supply of crude oil to Dangote Refinery is the US.
Yeah, I saw that.
So for the first time in 500 years or so, there is a manufacturing operation, a large-scale beneficiation operation where the raw material is coming from the so-called global north
to come and to be refined.
And the beneficiation is happening in the world's largest black country. And a bunch of black people are taking the economic benefits of that beneficiation. Can you imagine how upset some people are about this? That is what is happening here. So, you know, I had a few people when I think it was in 2024, there was this NGO called Dialogue Earth that reached out to me that wanted me to do a hit piece on Dangote Refinery. I had been one of the critics of the refinery project
at first.
I believe that the timelines were unrealistic. One of the things they did was shortly before President Buhari left office, they did a commissioning ceremony for the refinery, which was not complete. So it was like a political thing because he wanted to cut a ribbon before he left office. But this thing was clearly like more than a year away from being complete.
Okay.
So they were going to town, slapping each other on the back. Congratulations on commissioning the refinery. And I was the one who came out and said, this thing is probably not going to work till 2025 or so. Like this thing is an uncompleted project. Why are you cutting a ribbon over an uncompleted project? So these were the things that made me feel like, because Dangote has played these games before where he acts like he's going all in on something. Meanwhile, he's just looking for an importation license for that thing. Because one of the things he did when he was building this refinery was that he proposed that only those who run refineries in Nigeria should be allowed to have importation licenses for refined fuel. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, here we go again. Because he did the same thing with sugar. Where he claimed that he's going all in on sugar refining, and he didn't really, but somehow ended up with sugar importation licenses. So I thought that's what this was.
But I
was one of the critics, but this turned out to be the real deal.
Okay.
So this NGO reached out to me thinking that I'm just a mindless hater or something.
Yeah.
And they offered me money to write a hit piece, basically saying that this refinery is bad for the environment. It violates Nigeria's commitments under COP28, energy transition, all that. And I basically put them on blast. I put them on blast. I put their email on Twitter, everything. Like I took screenshots, everything. This is what these people want me to do.
Wow.
They want to pay me $500 they are looking for a prominent Nigerian commentator to put his name and face in front of a Western attack against this refinery, because that's what it is. It's a Western attack. These people don't want this refinery to exist and or to operate. So they're using a Nigerian commentator to tell the Nigerian government that this thing violates Nigeria's commitments that have been made under COP28, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, the Nigerian government should shut it down because it's bad for the environment.
Yes. But this NGO, where does it come from? Like,
Dialogue Earth is a British NGO.
British, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's a British NGO. It's based in London. So when I did that, when I had that display where I put them on blast, certain people were like, why would you of all people be supporting Dangote? Like, you have never liked this guy.
Yeah.
You regularly describe him as an economic parasite, as a monopolist. Some people are saying that, like, why would you, of all people, have something positive to say about this guy?
Dangote?
Why would you support his business venture? And for me, it's obvious that it's not just a private business venture. It's an important piece of national infrastructure. If Nigeria or if Africa is going to reverse that economically ruinous road that has been prescribed for it, that all you should do is supply raw materials to the global market in perpetuity, then these are the exact kind of things you need. You need to beneficiate those resources you're exporting. How do you beneficiate crude oil? You refine it.
Of course.
The same way, if you want to beneficiate gold, you refine it and you turn it into gold bullion instead of gold nuggets. Right? If you want to beneficiate tomatoes, you build a factory. So what's not to like about this? Why would, So, but as I said, I think this is one of the most clear-cut examples of what neocolonialism actually looks like in the modern day in Africa, where the people who are actually responsible for keeping things the way they are, they tend to stay almost entirely out of sight. Now, so if you're not perceptive, you will not realize that what you're interacting with is a colonial behemoth. You will think you're interacting with Africans like you. So like this Dialogue Earth thing that I spoke about, the person who emailed me is a Kenyan.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're not careful, you'll think, oh, this is a Kenyan emailing me. The address is in Nairobi, somewhere in Westlands or Kilimani or something. So this is a Kenyan NGO. It's a Kenyan environmental organization that is concerned about something happening in another African country. That's what it looks like. Until you peel 2 inches beneath the surface and you realize, okay, who is paying this Kenyan guy? Who is his boss? And it turns out to be some Muzungu in London. And then you do some more digging and who is behind Dialogue Earth? And then you start seeing the same old funding entities that are linked to US intelligence agencies. And you're like, oh, okay, that's what that is. So I guess if there's one thing that I would like for people to make a habit of now is to become more suspicious of whatever information is put in front of their eyes. Because these characters have become very, very good at digital blackface.
Interesting.
They become very good at presenting neo-colonial agendas using what looks like you. They're excellent at it now.
Okay.
This goes even beyond like economic warfare and stuff. Sometimes even their information wars, like on social media, they have armies of bot accounts whose display pics are AI generated and they look just like you. You think you're talking to an African, to a black person, you're talking to a computer somewhere in Vienna or something, and you don't know. So people just need to become a bit less credulous about what's really happening in the world. These things are real. These things do happen. We interact with these systems on a daily basis and we don't even know what we are looking at.
So Dangote, so what do you think is going to happen in future with the refinery? You think the government is finally going to take his refinery seriously and to take refining, just oil refining in general, locally? Like, what do you think?
I think, famous last words, knock wood. But I think at this point, he has hit the too big to fail mark. I think they've already tried they've thrown the kitchen sink at it and it has just not worked. The fellow I talked about who was talking about how it's a monopoly or it doesn't meet emission standards, he's resigned.
Okay.
So I think that particular war has been won and lost.
Okay.
I think, again, just because of the sheer size and scale of this refinery, you simply can't destroy it without fundamentally discrediting everything about yourself as a Nigerian government. The largest single investment ever made in Nigerian history. You can't destroy it. Because if you do, you're going to die, basically. I don't know who is going to kill you, and I'm not suggesting anything, but you're going to die.
Interesting.
So I think it's too big to fail. I think it's it started a bit slowly because the government has done everything in its power to frustrate. They don't supply crude to the refinery. I'm sure I just mentioned refinery sources crude from the US.
I know.
Because the Nigerian government said, we have already locked all our crude production into long-term contracts, so we don't have anything for you.
Even Angola, some of Angola's oil is coming into Dangote refineries.
Exactly, but there's almost no Nigerian oil feeding it. It is what it is. So, but it's succeeded.
Yeah.
And I don't think at this point, I think it has hit escape velocity. Now, as to whether the Nigerian government will take refining seriously, first of all, I think it's unimportant now. I think whether the government does or doesn't, that ship has already sailed. However, do I think it's going to take refining seriously? Absolutely not. The reason simply being that historical precedents that Nigeria already had 4 refineries and it never worked. I mean, I don't want to put somebody into trouble by saying this, so I won't mention his name.
Okay.
But I have a friend who, let's just say, works in the oil space. I won't mention the name of the company because it might identify him. He works in the oil space, and he had this bright idea some years back that, hey, he went to meet his bosses. So the oil entity is based in the US. So he walks into his boss's office. He has a bright idea one day. Like, look, I come from Nigeria. Like, there are 4 non-functioning refineries there. I'm sure with our resources and our know-how and our expertise, we can go in there. We can do something. We can turn it around. We can turn this into a functional asset. And I'm quoting him. This is what he told me. I'm quoting him verbatim. That his boss, the Muzungu boss, looked at him and said, they have 4. If they really wanted to refine, what makes you think that they wouldn't already be doing so? And what makes you think that if they haven't wanted to do so all this while, like, it's your entry that is going to make them do it now? Long story short, the boss gave him a blank check. Go and do what you think you can do there. And he went in, he met with, this was during the Buhari era.
Okay.
And he met with the then Minister of State for Petroleum, and there was a lot of back and forth and back and forth. And after about close to a year of back and forth and back, come to my office today, come tomorrow, come to the office, they keep him outside waiting. You can hear them watching Champions League football inside. After all that, it became abundantly clear nobody's interested. And that's not by accident. Because think about what his boss said. If you are taking what his boss said at face value, then you are thinking that his boss is blaming the Nigerians. His boss is simply saying those people are incompetent or they don't want to refine the oil. Well, again, if you listen actively, what the boss is also not saying is that I know something that you don't.
Which is?
I know that these refineries are never going to work.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how I know, but I know. That's what his boss was basically telling him.
Hey, Nigeria.
So that's what neocolonialism looks like. Because, again, because so many Nigerians have this very unhelpful idea that Nigeria is this very big, important, powerful country.
Yeah.
So because of that, a lot of them don't even realize that this your big, important, powerful country is being used as a plaything by all these global entities. The business entities, the political entities, they're being used as Nigeria doesn't command more international weight than Eswatini in the eyes of these people. A lot of Nigerians don't know that. So just because, you have 230 million people, 930,000 square kilometers of that, you have every resource known to man, you have this, you have that. That doesn't mean that these people don't control every aspect of your public life, of your government, because they do. They're just very, very good at couching it behind 2 or 3 layers of plausible deniability. So you won't see a white face when you go there. You will only see faces that look just like yours. So if you don't understand how to trace things to the ultimate source, you will just end up with the idea that everything in front of you is all there is. And then that's where you hear Nigerians have express these very problematic ideas talking about, oh, something is wrong with black people. Something is just wrong with Nigerians. Nigerians have psychological problems, all of which is nonsense.
Nigeria will happen to you. That's what I've heard. Nigeria will happen.
All of which is nonsense.
Yeah.
Nigeria is a rational country functioning exactly the way it is being actively piloted to function.